First of all, let me just begin by saying that every time Moses Kuria opens his mouth to speak, often he confirms our worst fears that we had when his appointment was announced as a CS, that he is not an individual who would conduct himself in private life and in public life in a manner so as to bring honor and prestige to the high office that he holds. And so it doesn't surprise me that, Narima is saying that, this is expected of him. That as a country, we have been put in a place where we have to consistently accept poor remarks and very unpalatable language from the office of a cabinet secretary is something that is regrettable. And I think really it behoves upon the president to examine himself and ask himself, among all the highly qualified Kenyans, and you know that in Kenya, it is well documented that we have the best human resource, if not in the continent, in the world. And that's why part of the delegations that the president has been holding was to try and get to export our human resource to other countries. So you have to ask ourselves, is really Moses Kuria the best that we can get as a country?
Right.
What kind of modeling is he giving to the young and the future of our society?
Right.
So that in itself points to the kind of crisis that Moses Kuria presents every time he speaks. But there is also a positive to it. The positive to it is that the story that has been carried by the National Media Group is giving the government sleepless nights. So in a sense, you get the feeling they have been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and so they are unsettled. And I would just want to urge the media, the National Media Group and the media generally, not to be cowed by this kind of empty and baseless threats, because it is not, government does not advertise in the media as a favor to the media. Most of the time it is because they are legal obligations to advertise. And so it should not be treated that if you don't do us this favor, we will not do you this favor. The media should continue reporting us fearlessly as it has. And you can see why. I mean, the other day there was a tender by NHIF which had to be cancelled as a result of a media expose. The issue that the National Media Group reported about the edible cooking oils is something which the Law Society has already picked, and it has presented a case in court to challenge the process under which those the waiver, the tax waivers were given for importation of the edible oils. And it tells you that their uncomfortableness means that it has a marking of a scandal, because we've looked at the law under which they have made to justify that request. The law doesn't allow that kind of a request, that kind of a justification. So there are so many issues from a legal perspective, from a policy perspective with that decision. So why is it that the government then is extremely uncomfortable about that scrutiny on edible oils? You know, when someone is eating and you are coming to, disturb them, then basically you're making them uncomfortable. And I think that that is the positive of the story, and the media should continue doing what it is doing.
There's clearly some quiet under the laurels. That's why they're not sitting comfortable.
But there's a question about whether there's recourse, and if indeed any one of the bodies, because there's a unified statement that is expected to be made tomorrow, if they came to you in any way for legal support, would there be any grounds? Because he could probably say this was a roadside declaration, there's nothing I cited in law. Is there anything to hold him to?
Well, let's just say that it is a regrettable statement, a statement that is so baseless that it doesn't deserve some sort of reaction, other than the fact that it is coming from someone who occupies a position of trust, right, and a position under which he is a consumer of our resources in the form of taxes. So were it any other individual, this is a statement that would is best ignored.
But not tolerated, must be condemned, because that is how
and
someone like Trump would start saying the narrative of fake news, and it became
and entirely, I say so because, of course, recognizing the position that he holds, then of course there has to be a response to it. But if you were to then engage in litigation over such which are mostly leaning towards a violation of the Constitution and several provisions of the leadership provisions, then perhaps we will be seeking to seek an interpretation from the courts whether he should continue sitting as a cabinet secretary when clearly he falls short of the integrity provisions that are set out in the Constitution. But the other challenge is that when you look at the entire structure of government, it becomes extremely difficult to sometimes just pick on Moses Kuria alone, because the choices that this government has made in terms of the appointments that have been put in public office are extremely wanting. Yeah.
So for your, at least in your points, you don't feel it's necessary to pursue it legally, but it speaks to something in terms of when he calls a media or Nation Media Group opposition, it speaks to something lacuna of sorts. There's a void. Do you see that from your judgment of the dynamics? Because it seems now the media is the one that will hold the power to account.
Absolutely. I think it's a very dangerous territory that we're in, because we have seen examples of molding a narrative. And a classic example is civil society. What we do. And it started with the simple basic notion of evil society. Then it moved toward foreign-funded donor ideas and agenda, and then it waters down the work that civil society does, because now the public now views the civil society as, self-interested and selfish and only interested in pushing their own agenda and having foreign aid. So that's the danger of allowing this to happen, because it's creating a narrative that, one of the voices that is seen to be pushing against the grain in terms of doing a lot of exposés. And Kenyans are hungry for this stuff. And we're hungry for it because we want to get an understanding of where the money is going. We do. So they want it. They want this information. So when you have Nation Media Group channeling out all of this information that they are eating up, and here you have a representative of government basically watering down efforts and telling us, completely scapegoating, basically taking our attention away from the issue and then focusing it on non-issues that are not relevant at all. So we lose the conversation. Like right now, we're not even discussing the expose. We are discussing the nonsense that he said. So this is where we are. So for me, that's why I think it's dangerous, because even when you look at the population of Kenya, and it being majority young, a lot of people are now getting their information from digital platforms, which is where he went first.
So the fact that you have public figures having access to a large reach and network without verification, without fact checking, it's just an open playing field to do whatever the hell you want, is scary. It is completely scary.
Yeah.
Because when you have that sense of power in countries that are literally a conversation away from conflict, what he says can actually speaks political violence, instigates.
Yeah.
It can encourage people to instigate violence, is a concern. So for me, I don't think it's a small matter at all.
Right.
And I think these are the questions of what is a leader anyway, especially a political leader, because something like this in a normal business or company, I can't do it.
Yeah.
My team, if I did that in my own organization, my own board would ask me to step down. Why is it when it comes to political leadership, government seems to have leeway to do whatever the hell they want? But they're the ones who are supposed to serve the people. If anything, they're the ones who are supposed to have more responsibility.
Right.
So there needs to be a bar that is set. And right now, we're seeing there's absolutely no bar. And what are we going to wait for to put a bar? Like, what are we waiting for?
I mean,